Hi, and welcome to the To Be Read podcast, where we give honest reviews on viral books that you might see on social media and popular book review websites. This is Chris.
And Carison. And on today's episode, we will be discussing Britney Spears' memoir, The Woman in Me. So cozy on in, and let's see if you should add this book to your TBR shelf. All right, hello everyone. Long time no see. I think just for our schedules, once a month for right now is gonna probably be good for us.
Probably.
We're both moms. Chris is a working mom, and uh, life, especially now that it's the summer. We are going out with our kids and doing things as well. So, we're very excited for this episode. We read Britney Spears' memoir, The Woman in Me. We will definitely get into our overall reading, what we thought of the book, and also talk about our next book. First, I'm going to read the synopsis. Usually, I read off of good reviews, but I went to Barnes & Noble's this time on their synopsis. There is the part that's the same on every book, but it has a note from your bookseller, and I also like what they wrote in there. So I'm going to read the original synopsis and then the note from the bookseller as well. So here we go. The Woman in Me is a brave and astonishingly moving story about freedom, fame, motherhood, survival, faith, and hope. In June of 2021, the whole world was listening as Britney Spears spoke in open court. The impact of sharing her voice, her truth, was undeniable, and it changed the course of her life and the lives of countless others. The Woman in Me reveals for the first time her incredible journey and the strength at the core of one of the greatest performers in pop music history. Written with remarkable candor and humor, Spears' groundbreaking book illuminates the enduring power of music and love, and the importance of a woman telling her own story on her own terms at last. And then here's the note from Barnes & Noble. As one of the most recognizable cultural icons, Britney Spears has been through a gauntlet, and here she steps out and reclaims her space and her voice with a deeply moving memoir that details her journey through fame and family and the endurance and perseverance required to keep going. With an endearing narrative voice, this is the kind of personal journey that will inspire any reader. So, I'll start with what Goodreads has this rated as, and then we'll do what we have. With 423,322 ratings, it is rated at 3.88 stars out of 5. Chris, what would you rate it as?
3.
A 3?
A 3
Okay.
star.
Okay. I at first rated it as a 5, but then I got to thinking more, and I'm going to do a 4. This is my first memoir, so I'm sure if I read more, my thoughts would change. But I don't have much experience with memoirs, so I don't know how deep some people get with theirs and things like that. Why did you rate it as a 3?
So I think it's important to note that I did not physically read this book. I listened to it. I think that it would have been a 4 if if Britney Spears would have read it herself. She did in the beginning of the audiobook mention that due to the weight of some of the things discussed in the book, that she was having somebody else read it, and I think that that's fair. But I have read other memoirs that I felt more moved reading and felt a different connection to that actor or actress or person more so than I did with this book. It felt like, we'll get a little bit more into it, but it kind of felt almost like this book was just a list of things that happened to her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I did a 4 because after thinking more about it, um, I personally feel like this book should have been written in a couple more years after she had been out of her conservatorship for much more longer of a time, and probably a little bit more therapy on her end, because I know she mentioned in the book that she's in therapy. Um, but I feel like she wasn't able to get into a lot of detail because it is very traumatizing what she went through. And I can't imagine writing about your life where everyone thought you were crazy and you were going through so much and you felt like you had no say in your life, and you're finally getting a say in your life, but you don't really know how. She even mentioned how she's working through finding herself and who she is as a person now, as a person in her 40s. And I feel like if she would have waited a little bit longer, maybe she would have found who she is as a person and would have been able to give a little bit more in her writing.
Right. And may
It
even be in a place where she could have narrated the audiobook
yeah.
herself.
It it was a good book. I will definitely be keeping this book. I don't know if I'll read it again because it's a very, very, very easy read.
I would agree with that.
There are some moments where I was like, gosh, I feel so bad for this girl. Um, but at the physical copy, it looks like the book is bigger than it is. But the
Yes.
um, most of the time when a chapter ends, you know how, like, how do I describe this? Um, okay, so chapter ends and it's like halfway on a page, and then it starts on the next page. Well, most of the time in her chapters, it like ended on a full page, and then it was like a whole that backside of that page was blank, and then the next page was the next chapter.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So it wasn't a full page that was blank, it was just the backside of a page that was blank. There were like a couple chapters where it went onto the backside of a page, and then there was right into it like a normal book. But most of the time, like the back page was blank at the end of a chapter.
That's really interesting. I wonder why that like was a choice.
I don't know. I really don't know. But yeah, it was a very easy read. Um, there were a couple times when I had to like put it down because of just like personal emotions that were going through me while I was reading the book. But overall, I read this very, very quickly. I don't think if I would have read it in all one sitting, it'd been done very quickly.
Yeah. I do think that it's important to note that this book was published last year.
October of 2023.
Yeah. And so it has been like
2 years.
6, 7 months.
Oh yeah, so 2 years since her conservatorship ended, and seven
Yeah.
months since the book came out.
Yes. But also, like, I will admit that for me, I do feel like there was a little bit of like hardening on my end because I'm not famous. I have no desire to be, and I can't even imagine the amount of um, private moments that are never private that famous people have to go through, including Britney Spears. With that said, um, I think that growing up in a world as a woman, I have learned that women in media, especially, are always sexualized, are always the one to blame. It has been time and time again where women are the ones who, like, I mean, with sexual assault, a lot of the times the woman is the one who's, well, you should have dressed differently, or you should have done this differently, or you were asking for it, kind of thing. And I'm not saying that's right, but I think that in this book, reading it and like reading about like how they essentially just like sexualized this young teenager. As a mom, that really like eats into me, even though like I have a boy. But I've noticed that I wasn't at first very concerned about it, which is sad also, because what, she was 16 for her first like,
Yeah, for her first music video.
yeah. And I remember mom and dad never let us listen to her or anything like that because she was wearing this little mini skirt and a crop top, and she was just a very sexualized human being. And now as an adult, I can watch that video and realize that that's not really what Britney Spears' vision in that video was, but how as a child that's exactly what I saw was an older woman. As a kid, like 16 feels so old.
Yeah.
And I remember like I felt like I was sinning watching the video.
When you were younger.
Yeah. And
I watched the video after that chapter where she talked about filming.
same.
I watched the video for the first time. I'd never seen it before. And I was like, my gosh, she was 16 filming this? Like, nothing wrong with how you want to portray yourself at all. I just know when I was 16, I would have not wanted to dress like that.
Right. Well, and like think about it like this. Grown women will dress up for Halloween in that costume,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
teenagers even. And its entire purpose is to have a sexy costume.
Yeah. Sexy schoolgirl.
Yeah. And
Did
so,
you ever watch Glee?
yes, absolutely.
Did you watch the Britney episode? When I watched that episode, I was like, at the time, I, again, Chris and I grew up very conservative, wasn't allowed to anything Britney Spears. So at the time, when I watched that Britney episode, I was like, why are they, um, like reenacting these music videos of like someone who, oh, I was so naive. Someone who's like in their 20s or 30s. Because that's how old I thought Britney Spears was when she filmed those videos the first time. So then when I'm reading this book, I'm like, oh my gosh, she was a baby. Like,
Yeah.
she was a
That's kind of what
baby.
I'm trying to get at, is that like as a kid, I thought she was an adult.
Yes, I didn't think she was a teenager filming that.
And it's my naivety that made me still think to this book, reading this book, that she was still at that time an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, it makes sense why all of the slander and things like that drove her to do extravagant things.
Mm-hmm.
Extravagant being my word of choice here. Um, but I I will say that reading the book, I even portrayed like Justin Timberlake as a completely different person in my head.
You thought of him as like Justin Timberlake from like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Same. I was like, nah, he's not 16 in these. Especially because the Canadian tuxedo that they wore together at the awards ceremony that she mentioned, I've seen pictures of that. They do not look like teenagers in that.
Right. Right.
I was like, I always thought they were like older.
Always.
So
And
it's
they, it makes sense though, like we're kind of like dumb, right, for thinking
Yeah.
that, gosh, she's only in her 40s, but she was still an adult when I was like under 10.
Yeah. And I think that's because we weren't allowed to listen to her music or
Right.
anything like that.
Every bit of information we had about her was through like friends.
Yeah. I think the only reason I knew about her shaving her head was because I saw it in a magazine at the grocery store.
Yeah, like
You
on
know,
the
like at the.
cover.
Yeah. And like, I picked it up and mom was like, no.
Yeah, I will say that I still don't understand from her description in her book. I feel like one, she just kind of glazed over the shaving of the head. And two,
Yeah.
I don't feel like I still understand why we had to be that dramatic about it if, like, she wasn't on drugs.
Yeah. I was confused a lot. Um, this is what I mean by I feel like details were left out, and I feel like she could have written it later. Was like the constant her going back to rehab. Like, I'm not standing up for her father because he's a POS. Like,
For real.
um, gosh, he deserves everything coming to him. Um, but I didn't understand. I was even more confused why she was still being sent if all she was taking was Adderall. Which, like,
I mean,
she
you
said
can
in
be
her.
addicted to Adderall.
Yes, but she was saying, like, especially that real hardcore one that, like, was the last one she was sent to, where it was, like, hardcore drug addicts, like, heroin addicts and all that. I'm like, why is she being sent?
You would think that they would draw, like, blood or something like that to just be like, nah, you good.
Yeah. Or, like, because she wasn't able to drink. She wasn't allowed to drink alcohol and all this stuff. And I don't know anything about people going to rehab. I've never known anyone in my life who's gone to rehab. So I don't know all the ins and outs of that. But in my mind, unless places are corrupt, and maybe there are places that are corrupt, I feel like at the intake, wouldn't they like do drug tests on her
I
when you're
mean,
being in?
you would think, right? So that they know, like, what you're addicted to, so that they kind of know, like, what they're gonna
Yeah, because it was a
go
different one that
through.
she went to every
Well,
time.
and then, like, you would want to avoid certain medications depending on what they're on. I don't know.
Yeah,
But I've never been in that world, so I could be wrong too.
yeah, yeah, same. Like, yeah, like I said, I've never known anyone who's gone to rehab.
But yeah, I do think that
Also,
it would have been interesting, more interesting, if she talked more about her time in rehab
mm-hmm.
and like her mental state, what she was going through. I wanted more details because I still don't feel like I know more about her.
Yeah, I wanted more details about her court case to get out of her conservatorship. Um, because that's her fans were a big part of her. I mean, she mentioned her fans were a big part of her finally like realizing, okay, I got to get out of this. Um, and it was like so towards the end, which of course it was towards the end because that's how she got out. But I wanted a little bit more detail on like how she got out, like how, like what the judge, like all the evidence that the judge, like
What
I
hoops
guess
did you
it,
have to jump through?
yeah, and maybe I guess since it was televised, I could go back and watch it if I really wanted to.
Right,
But
but that's not the point about reading about it, though, right?
yeah, exactly. Also, her mom can go, and she has it coming for her too. Especially what really um, broke my heart when it came to her mom was the fact that her mom was giving her alcohol at 13. 13. I,
It almost feels like her parents were grooming her for the
to
path that
be,
she ended up taking.
yes, yes. because her dad was an alcoholic and her mom was giving her alcohol and cigarettes at 13.
Well, and like when you grow up like that, how are you supposed to know better?
Right? And then her sister, which, like, for our listeners, Chris and I were obsessed with Zoe 101.
Yes.
Obsessed. We loved it. I think we both cried when the show ended, and it was because Jamie Lynn got pregnant.
Yes.
And, like,
And I was so mad.
we were so heartbroken. But I have heard about the Alexa Nichols. Is that her? I don't know if I pronounced her last name. I know her first name's Alexa. But she played Nicole on the show.
Okay.
And that was who Brittany yelled at when she
Confronted.
talked about her book. Yeah, in the book when she was pregnant with her first son.
Mm-hmm.
It was Alexa. Because Jamie and the girl who played, I know her real name is Victoria Justice. She played, she came later. She wasn't the first roommate with Nicole and Zoe. She was the other roommate.
Lola.
Lola, yes. So Jamie and Victoria were like the ones who were bullying Alexa, and that's why she left that season, because I've watched interviews of Alexa describing things that like they would do to her. So I already didn't like Jamie when I found that out, and then I was reading Brittany's book even more, and I was like, no. No, I'm over this chick. Because I love Dancing with the Stars. Jamie Lynn was on Dancing with the Stars. I was not okay with that. She was also on another show. It's like World's Toughest Challenge. It's like these military people are like putting celebrities through like military training, basically. She was on that show, and the whole time she's like boo-hooing and crying about like her life, and I'm like, girl, you were a spoiled brat. And it made me sad because I loved Zoe 101 so much, and then to just like see and read like all the things, and then she wrote her own book too. Just like, as the youngest sibling who grew up differently than my other siblings, I couldn't imagine acting like that. Like, ordering my parents around and telling them what to do.
That would have not flown in our household.
No. Oh my god, no. But I couldn't even imagine wanting to try to do that. Like, I think if I would have done it even as a joke, I couldn't even have gone through that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to know more about her relationship with her brother, because it seems like they've mended their relationship really well. At least that's what I've looked at her Instagram a little bit. I think he's on her Instagram some. Also, her and her husband are divorced, that she mentions at the end of the book. Hissam, I'm so sorry, I'm pronouncing his name wrong. But yeah, they divorced beginning of this year.
You did some research.
I looked at her Instagram.
I did not. I did look up her music videos though.
Yes, and I looked up that Disney radio music ceremony that she talked about, where like the other performers did her songs and she was like blindsided because Jamie Lynn came on and sang her song. I watched that too.
Interesting.
But yeah. So what were like some of your favorite parts?
I do like that she was really transparent about how much of a mama bear and kind of like a B word she was when she was pregnant. Because like pregnancy rage and postpartum rage is like legit a thing. And so I always love it when people, especially people that other people listen to,
Mm-hmm.
don't gloss over and like give like the rose color sunglass version of motherhood,
Yes.
because as great as it is also traumatic in the best and the worst ways possible.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I do, that is her talking about being a mom and the way that she like loves her children and things like that really like I enjoyed reading about that.
Mm-hmm.
And it broke my heart hearing about the abortion, and like I went and like had a little bit of a cry, but that's my own like personal things coming up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And uh I I don't know,
She's
I
basically
felt for
was.
her so much because I felt like she was just pressured into that. And so
Yeah.
I did like that she talked and brought to light that issue, especially since it seemed like it was something that was like shoved down and hush hush for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. I did not know about that about her. Um, and I felt like how you did, how like she was kind of forced into it because Justin was basically like, nah, I don't want to be a dad right now.
Yeah, it kind of like made. I mean, you have to be realistic, right? Like, in that world, especially the music world, eventually, if you still want to make it, you have to make some selfish choices.
Mm-hmm.
And Justin Timberlake did not fall short of doing that. But to be honest, neither did Britney Spears.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't know. I do think that because Justin Timberlake is a man and he's a very good looking man, and he also has made quite a presence for himself in the acting world as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sometimes it's hard to see people um, without like seeing them as they're portrayed in television and things like that. And
Yeah.
so Justin Timberlake's been kind of like worshipped. And so I do think that it's kind of nice to see a human side to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did the what she said about like the her whole having to have an abortion and him saying like he cheated, well she cheated on him even though she only cheated because he was cheating on her. Did it change your perspective of him?
A little bit, actually.
Yeah.
It did.
Which people can change and grow, and I know he's married and has kids of his own
Right.
now.
Well, and like when they were together, you have to also realize that they were both very young. And
Mm-hmm.
as like a 16-year-old, being famous comes. I mean, she even talked about it. Like being famous is like, it was mind blowing. It was so fun
Mm-hmm.
at first, and it was kind of bizarre to like walk out in the world and everybody knew who you were. But after a while, it does become daunting. So, like, I mean, you have to figure that there were probably a bunch of girls throwing themselves at Justin Timberlake, especially when he was part of NSYNC. Like, I remember growing up talking, like, not talking about because I wasn't allowed to listen to them, but hearing everybody talk about NSYNC. To this day, people still are obsessed with NSYNC that are my age.
Yeah, especially anytime it's May.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you'll go to a club and you'll still hear um
The Bye 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 song?
yeah. I was like, what is that song called? The
I
Bye
don't
Bye
even
Bye
know.
song. I don't even know the words to it. And so like, but that's how iconic that band was. And there were
Mm-hmm.
people who wore the boy band shirts and like did little like Reddit, like whatever the equality to Reddit, like Reddit was, those little quizzes about which boy band member would be their spouse kind of thing, you know? And so it makes sense. Britney Spears came out on her own, like, and I think that that was probably the best thing that she could have done for herself. And I think that that is so brave that her and her mom made that decision for her,
Hmm.
because, like, getting in a group was,
Risky.
from my understanding, the easier in,
Yeah.
because it was
Yeah.
kind of the thing, the trend. Think about it: NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, the Cheetah Girls.
Yeah.
It was the thing to have a group to start off that way and then to break up and go your own way.
Yeah. Even it's
And
still kind of like that One Direction, um, Fifth
the Jonas
Harmony.
Brothers.
Yeah. Um, yeah. What other bands? Fifth Harmony.
I
Yeah,
don't know
it's
who
still
that
even a
is.
thing. It's an all-girl group. They were also formed on the X Factor, like One Direction was. Anyways, besides the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with you though about the whole um, her bringing in her motherhood aspect. I um, respected her uh, love towards her kids and wanting to protect them as much as possible, and especially because they were growing up in the limelight and
Yeah. Well, and like, screw her ex-husband, okay? Like, that whole thing, reading about the way that, like, he became kind of famous and then just like decided that he was better than her. Screw
I
him. And then
know.
she was played by, like, lawyers and things like that, and told that she needs to call the divorce before him, and it ended up actually going back in her face. Oh my god, I was so heated reading about that. I was like, I
I
wanted to
know.
go, like, fight someone, especially because kids were involved.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's so hard when you have kids and you're like going through all of that. And I respected her honestly lashing out at the paparazzi because that is one thing. If I, for some unknown reason, ever became famous, I'm very protective of my son already when it comes to social media. Um, I would be like, there's some celebrities who don't show their kids on social media. If I became famous, I would lock it down even more than how I have it now, because I'm I'm
Yeah.
the one who would had chose to go into that profession. My son did not. He deserves the respect and privacy of being hounded. I've seen videos of like parents going off on paparazzi for like because they're coming up close with the big lights and the cameras and all that stuff, and I'm just like, you go girl for like
I
going
know.
off on those
Those were
guys.
like my favorite videos to watch, and so I completely respect her going off on the paparazzi. I mean, even if the kids like weren't involved, I still 100%, like, as a photographer myself, I don't think that I could ever intrude on somebody's personal space no matter how famous they are, because they're still people.
Yeah, yeah. Anyways, what would you rate this overall? I mean, not that. Oh my god, we did
I was
that.
like, we already did that.
I was gonna say, would you suggest to add this to someone's TBR?
Yeah, I would actually. I think that even though I wanted more from it, it was still pretty insightful.
Yeah, especially if this, like for me, as being a first time reading a memoir, a celebrity memoir, I should say, um, it was a good intro, a light little dusting for memoirs. Anyways, do you want to
We
talk about
didn't
our
go
next
over the
book?
book cover.
Oh,
Do you want to go
yeah,
over that?
yeah, we can do that real quick.
I don't feel
Um,
like it helped. I think the book cover definitely, like, portrays who people view Britney Spears as, but I don't think that it helped the image that she's trying to turn around.
um, I'm going to disagree with you on that solely because
Okay.
of her Instagram. If you would look at her Instagram, this, yeah. Yeah. I think that portrays who she wants to be known as. Are you looking at her Instagram?
Yeah.
She like dances in her bikini and all that stuff, which power to her. She's loving her body. Love your body how you want to love your body. Um,
Okay. She's being very Britney Spears, like what you would expect for that.
yes. So the cover still matches her. I think to me the cover is like saying, um, you may view me as um, like sexual or bad influence, but I'm showing you who I really am, and I love myself for who I am, no matter what I look like. If that makes sense. Kind of like when women do boudoir pictures. Are you looking at the Instagram stuff still?
Yeah.
Kind of like when women do boudoir to like empower themselves. I feel like that's what this cover is. It's her empowering herself.
Getting
To be
off of
like,
that.
it's interesting. Her Instagram's interesting.
Yeah.
She's finding herself. That's you just.
Yep.
uh, anyways, it's a good book. We would recommend it. Yes. Just expect not to have like a lot of details on everything.
Yeah. You just get, like you said, a light dusting.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
You start for the next book.
Okay, so we're kind of going along. We this week we sent each other three different books that we found interesting that we have been seeing a lot of, and we decided to go with. I gotta pull it up. We decided to go with The House Across the Lake by Riley. Is that Sager? Sager? Sager.
We always do this where we get the last names wrong.
It's fine. We'll get it right for the next podcast.
Yes.
But it is considered a thriller. And so we chose this because all of the other choices were romances, and we both kind of felt like we had done several of those now, so we were trying to
Yeah.
do something else before we dive back into a romance.
And we wanted like a summertime book, and going to
Yes.
the lake is something that we used to do
Yeah,
as
which
kids
is so
growing up.
funny because you and I both chose summer themed reads without discussing that we
I
were choosing
know.
summer themed reads.
I know. Yeah.
But I was like, I need something, like everything was at the freaking beach. And I was like, I need like lake. And so when I saw this, I was just like, yes, please. Like, let's just add this in there.
Because you can relate to the lake, because that's the closest thing to you as a body of water.
Well, I mean, like you said, that's what we grew up doing was going to the lake all the
Yeah.
time. And then as a, I'm going to say a young adult, older teenager, so 18 to 24, uh, every year, probably at least twice a year, I went on a float trip.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. I've never
So
been on one. I still want to go on one.
you just have to choose the right float for the vibe that you're looking for. I wanted to party, so I chose the Party River during the biggest, partiest weekend every year.
Yeah, not me. Okay, so let's discuss what we think this book is going to be about.
And this is just based off of the cover, right?
Yeah,
And knowing that it's a thriller.
yeah. I feel like there's not a lot of it. The cover is literally just a house across from a lake, but it's like nighttime basically, so you can't really see a lot of detail. The house
Yeah.
has the lights on the inside. I'm wondering if someone gets murdered.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, knowing that it's a thriller, I'm going to assume so.
Oh my gosh, it's the same. Oh, never mind, never mind. At the top, it says an unputdownable page turner from the person who wrote The Silent Patient that we've read before.
Oh.
At first, when I saw the author of The Silent Patient, I was like, oh, it's the same author, but it's not the same author. But, so I'm feeling maybe those types of vibes because it's the same, genre.
I think that it's going to be kind of like, God, the woman on the train or whatever, but I'm really hoping that whoever is like being the voyeur is not like drunk or on drugs or anything like that, like in that, but I think that they're going to like be watching
The
whoever's
woman
living
on
in
the woman on the train? Do you mean the woman in... Are you talking about woman in cabin 10?
No.
Oh. I was like, what's the woman on the train?
The woman on the train. Oh yeah, I was right. That's what it's called. So the woman on the train is the woman is like a drunk, and she is like watching this like marriage essentially unfold, and I think that it's her like ex-husband or something. Don't quote me on this. It's been a long time. It came out in 2016 and I read it the year that it came out. But she's a drunk, and I don't like when the narrator has blank spots because they're unconscious or unaware of their body. So like drugs or alcohol, I don't really like reading those. And so I'm really hoping that this is just somebody who's on like a summer vacation and they're maybe alone and they're watching whatever this other family is doing across the lake, and then some shit goes down.
Okay, here's some things we can think about. Do you think it's one person watching one single person across the lake, or is it one person watching a family, or...
I'm thinking a couple, but that's just because I'm hoping that they don't involve like a whole family into something that's a thriller. And so, but the reason I'm thinking it's a couple is because that gives like a aggressor and a victim.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the age range of the people are? Like college or adult?
Mid-30s.
Okay.
College would be interesting. Like a dating couple. Interesting.
Definitely not teenager.
No.
I'm thinking like a 30-year-olds.
Yeah, I'm thinking like adults. People who kind of like are set in their life, but they're still living it.
Yeah. I'm excited to read it. We know nothing about this, so...
Yep. We haven't even read the synopsis yet, so this is literally us just looking at the cover and judging the book quite literally by the cover.
Yeah, and I've never seen this. I'm not on the thriller side of TikTok, though, so...
I only get, like, dabbles into it because most of the TikTok stuff I see is, like, dark romances right now.
Yeah, which would make sense for you to have, like, a thriller type thing.
Right.
Maybe if I get more onto that side. I'm totally on the cowboy romance side of TikTok. Anyways, I'm excited. So...
I'm too.
Anyways. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Definitely read Britney Spears' memoir if you grew up listening to her, following her, especially if you've done those things and you know a lot about her. I think that'd be a really good book for someone who wants to know more about her. But yeah, hope you guys liked this episode. Thank you for listening, and have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the To Be Read podcast. We hope you enjoyed our discussion on Britney Spears' memoir, The Woman in Me. Join us next time we discuss the Hassel